A long time ago, on the island of Sodor, there was a little railway known as the North Western. The smallest engine working on the main line was named Thomas. Thomas was a tank engine who lived at the big station. He was a cheeky little engine with 6 small wheels, a short stumpy funnel, a short stumpy boiler, and a short stumpy dome. He was a fussy little engine too. His job was to fetch trucks and coaches for the larger engines so they could take them out on long journeys. And when trains came in, he would pull the empty coaches away so that the big engines could go and rest. Thomas thought no engine worked as hard as he did. He loved playing tricks on them. He would come up behind them while they were sleeping, then blow his whistle to make them jump.
Wake up, lazy bones! Why don't you work hard like me?
The biggest engine working on the main line was Gordon. He was the biggest and proudest engine of all. He always pulled the big express, and was proud of being the only engine strong enough to do so.
Express coming through!
But one day, the express had been late, and Gordon had to make up for lost time. When he returned to the sidings, he was very tired and decided to go to sleep before his next train. That was until Thomas came up in his cheeky way.
Wake up, lazy bones! Do some hard work for a change. You can't catch me.
And off Thomas ran laughing. Instead of going to sleep again, Gordon thought how he could get back at Thomas. That night at the sheds, Thomas was being cheeky as usual. He was usually the smallest engine in the sheds, but he didn't let that bother him.
Hurry up, Henry. I heard it's meant to rain tonight.
Henry, another big blue engine, groaned. A few years earlier, Henry had ran into a tunnel to avoid the rain from ruining his, at the time, green paint with red stripes. After many ways of trying to get him out, he was walled up and left there. He was soon let out eventually, when Gordon burst his safety valve and couldn't pull the express.
I knew you were still afraid of the rain.
Edward, who was the oldest engine on the main line, grew stern.
That attitude won't get you very far, you know, Thomas.
Oh, please, Edward. I'm just having a bit of fun.
You know what, Henry? It's about time we do something about that Thomas.
Indeed.
I have a little idea. Want to hear it?
Go on then.
The next morning, Thomas would not wake up. His driver and fireman couldn't make him start. His fire went out and there was not enough steam.
Wake up, Thomas. Gordon will be waiting for his coaches.
At last, Thomas started.
Oh, dear.
The coaches were very impatient as Thomas pulled them out of the yards.
Hurry up! We'll be late!
Thomas gave them a rude bump.
Stop dawdling.
Where have you been? Where have you been?
They soon fussed into the station where Gordon was waiting.
Hurry up, you!
Hurry yourself.
Huh. Yes, I will.
And almost before the coaches had stopped moving, Gordon reversed quickly and was coupled to the train.
Get in quickly, please.
Thomas normally pushed behind the big engines to help them start, but he was always uncoupled first. This time, Gordon started so quickly they hadn't time to uncouple Thomas. Gordon's chance had come.
Come on!
The train grew faster and faster. Too fast for Thomas. He wanted to stop, but he couldn't.
Stop!
Hurry!
You can't get away! You can't get away!
Poor Thomas was going faster than he'd ever gone before. He was out of breath and his wheels hurt him, but he had to go on.
I'll never be the same again. My wheels will be quite worn out. Edward!
Thomas?
The train approaching platform 1 is the 8:17 express to Tidmouth. At last they stopped at a station.
Oh, yes! We're early, too.
Poor Thomas was uncoupled, and he felt very silly and exhausted. Everyone laughed to see him at the back. He went onto a turntable and ran onto a siding out of the way.
Well, little Thomas, now you know what hard work means, don't you?
Poor Thomas couldn't answer. He had no breath. He just puffed slowly away to rest and had a long drink. He went home very slowly that evening.
Maybe. I shouldn't be teasing the other engines so much. Oh.
He prepared himself for the big engines to make fun of him that night. However, they didn't seem to notice him as he returned to the sheds. They were having a conversation of their own.
Are you sure about that, Henry?
I heard it from the Fat Director's office this morning. Our railway and the London, Midland and Scottish Railway have finally made a deal. They will allow us to terminate with them at Barrow-in-Furness and to supply us with a new engine if they can operate the Normanby branch line. From what I understand, it shouldn't be long until the new engine gets here.
I imagine our main terminus will have to be changed in order for that to work.
I don't see why they can't just come over here and terminate with us at Vicarstown.
After the hard time that railway has given us, I think it would be best to take whatever deal we can get. As for the new engine, I think it's good that they have agreed to supply us with one. We could use their help.
It will probably be sent to that branch line on the other side of the island. I heard they are expanding it, and there's no way those Cothipot engines will be able to cover the distance.
You mean those engines with the boilers that point up in the air?
Yes, Gordon, just like those things people make coffee in.
Thomas didn't say anything. He thought it best to keep as much attention away from him as possible. He couldn't help but wonder about that new engine and about that branch line.
Surely a tank engine will be better suited.
The next day, Thomas was back in the yards. He was very surprised when he suddenly heard a high-pitched whistle. Just then, an unfamiliar black tender engine pulled up next to him. The engine applied his brakes sharply and came to a sudden stop.
Hello, Soda. Here's James.
Oh, hello there. Are you the new engine for the branch line?
Branch line? Of course not. I'm a mainline engine, and I am here to pull mainline trains.
Oh, but yeah, I thought they were getting a new engine like yourself for the new branch line extension. You know, on the other side of the island.
Well, whatever you thought, you were wrong. I've been told that my job is to pull passengers on the main line. You're the station pilot, so why don't you fetch me my coaches?
Thomas sighed and puffed away.
That engine smelled funny. Like, he had a strange burning smell.
Tell me about it. Wooden brake blocks? That's my bet. Typical for the LMS to give us a dodgy engine.
Thomas didn't like the sound of that. James proudly puffed down the line with his coaches. People all looked up in surprise and watched him clatter past. His coaches were not having a fun time at all. They were being rocked and swayed about behind him. They were having an awful time. When James brought them back to the yards, they were very dazed and glad that the day was over.
Are you two alright?
No, we are very worn out. That James engine wasn't being careful after all. He bumped us every time he stopped and started. And he looked everywhere apart from the track. It was dreadful.
Oh, well, I'm very sorry, your ladyships. Don't worry, I'll try to talk to him later tonight at the sheds.
Thank you so much. I'm Annie, by the way, and she's Clarabelle.
Well, yeah, well, nice to meet you two. I'm Thomas.
As Thomas puffed away, the coaches carried on twittering to each other.
Well, wasn't he a sweet little engine? Indeed. He'll go far, Clarabelle. Just you wait and see.
When Thomas got back to the sheds, he found James already there.
James, you need to be more careful with pulling coaches. The ones you pulled today told me how rough you were with them.
Oh, it's you. And, what would you know about pulling coaches? Aren't you just a pilot?
I know that you have to be careful with coaches when you're pulling them. Same goes for trucks. They don't like being bumped.
Oh, yeah. I think I know what I'm doing, thank you. I've been doing this for years, you know. All you do is shunt coaches for some bigger engines to take them out.
Well...
Gordon overheard the conversation and decided to butt in.
James is right, little Thomas. Pulling trains is an important job, and I am sure James knows what he is doing. I suggest you leave all the heavy work to engines like us.
James smiled smugly, proud that Gordon had stuck up for him. Thomas, on the other hand, was very cross.
Well, you'll see. One day I'll be pulling trains.
Oh, will you now?
Yes. Why, I just don't want to pull trains on the main line. I want to pull trains everywhere. I want to go and see the world.
Gordon and James stared, then burst out laughing.
Ho ho ho! Look around you, Thomas. This is your world. And besides, you're far too impatient. You'd leave something behind.
You'll see.
The big engines snorted and went to sleep, leaving a very cross Thomas awake.
Of course I can handle pulling a train.
But deep down, he wondered if Gordon and James were right. The next day, all he could think about was what James had said.
It isn't fair.
What isn't fair?
Edward pulled up next to the little tank engine. He could tell Thomas was angry about something. Thomas sighed and told Edward what James had said.
That new engine sounds like it's a bit too big for his wheels. You are right, Thomas. You do need to be careful with coaches. They don't like being bumped.
Try saying that to James.
Well, Thomas, don't worry about what James says. I'm seeing you and me. I'm pretty sure he has wooden brakes. He carries this strange burning smell with him wherever he goes. Wouldn't be surprised if he caught fire one day.
He does have a point though, Edward. All the other engines go out and pull trains every day, whilst I'm staying here in the yards, shunting trucks and coaches all day. I've been here longer than all of them, and it isn't fair.
Edward smiled.
I know how you feel, Thomas. Remember when Henry and Gordon first arrived and I ended up being sidelined? I stayed in the sheds for months. The other engines would always tease me about it.
The driver won't choose you again. He wants big, strong engines like us.
But when the driver and fireman did arrive, they felt sorry for me, so they took me out for a run in the countryside. Oh, I did have a splendid day. All the children ran to see me go by, and I met old friends at all the stations. They even took me out again the next day, where I ended up helping Gordon up the hill with a trainload of trucks. You see, Thomas, every engine gets their chance to prove themselves sooner or later. Trust me, I'm sure about one day you'll be out pulling a train of your own. It can be hard work though, so make sure you don't get impatient.
Thomas smiled as Edward puffed away back to work. Later that evening, Thomas saw Henry filling up on water.
Good evening, Henry.
Hello, Thomas.
Now, are you alright?
Oh, I'm fine. Just a bit under the weather is all.
Well, I hope you're better soon. Maybe your troops are blocked?
Probably. The men will look over me tonight.
Well, that's good. Anyways, I've been meaning to ask you something. How come you're afraid of the rain?
What?
Oh, come on. Even after you were let out of the tunnel, you're still afraid of the rain. I mean, it's just water. You're saying you put in your boiler. So, how can you be afraid of it?
I don't know, Thomas. I just am. And I don't like being teased about it either.
I'm not teasing, Henry. I'm only asking. I mean, you can't stop the rain. And, well, you can't go about worrying all the time.
I don't know why you're suddenly taking an interest in it after the way you teased me the other night.
Well, Henry, I've just been doing some thinking recently and...
And, for your information, I hardly worry at all. Well, it's sunny anyways.
And Henry snorted away back to the shed. Thomas sighed.
That could have gone better.
It was just Thomas and Henry in the sheds that night. Henry was still ill. The men tried hard, but they couldn't make him better. He felt just as bad the next day. Henry normally pulled the first train of the day. Thomas usually fetched his coaches.
If Henry is ill, maybe I could pull this train.
And Thomas ran off to fetch the coaches.
Come along, come along.
There's plenty of time. There is plenty of time.
Thomas brought them to the platform and wanted to run around in front at once, but his driver would not let him.
Don't be impatient. Wait until everything is ready.
Thomas waited and waited. The people got in, the garden station master walked up and down, the porter banged the doors, and still Henry didn't come. Thomas grew more and more excited. Soon, stepping on the platform, came none other than Sir Bertram Topham Hatt, the man in charge of all the engines on the island of Sodor. The engines used to call him the Fat Director.
What's going on here? Why hasn't a train left?
The garden station master told him about Henry.
Dear oh dear, you'll have to find another engine.
There's only Thomas, sir.
You'll have to do it then, Thomas. Be quick now.
Oh yes, sir.
So Thomas ran round to the front and back down on the coaches, ready to start.
Don't be impatient.
But Thomas was far too excited. What happened next, no one knows. Perhaps they forgot to couple Thomas to the train. Perhaps the driver pulled the lever by mistake. Anyhow, Thomas started, leaving the entire train behind.
Thomas, stop! Come back!
As he went past the first signal box, men waved and shouted, but Thomas didn't stop.
They're waving because I'm such a splendid engine. The others say it's hard to pull trains, but I think it's easy.
And he pretended to be like Gordon.
Hurry, hurry, hurry!
Thomas? What are you doing? I thought you worked in the yard.
Not today. Can't you see I'm pulling a train, James?
James said nothing. He just sniggered to himself in amusement.
What?
People have never seen me pulling a train before. It's very nice of them to wave. Thank you!
Soon he came to a signal set at danger.
Bother! I must stop. And I was going to say nicely too. What a nuisance signals are.
The signalman came over. Hello, Thomas. What are you doing here?
I'm pulling my first passenger train. Can't you see?
Where are your coaches then?
Well, bless me. We haven't left them behind.
Yes, you better go back and fetch them. Poor Thomas was so sad, he nearly cried.
Never mind. Let's just go back quickly and fetch them.
At the station, everyone was talking at once. They were telling the Fat Director what a bad railway it was.
Everyone, please calm down. We will find another end. Oh.
But when Thomas arrived, the passengers saw how sad he was and couldn't be cross.
I'm very sorry, sir. I really am.
You were told to wait until everything was ready.
This time, Thomas waited to be coupled onto the train and for his passengers to get on board.
Ready?
Yes, Thomas. Now you are ready.
And this time, he really pulled it. The other engines thought it was very funny when they heard the story of Thomas's train.
Look, here's Thomas, who wanted to pull a train but forgot about the coaches.
I'm glad I've come to work on the railway, Thomas. You always give me something funny to laugh about.
Thomas was upset.
The Fat Controller will never let me pull trains again. But I want to go places. I want to do things. I want to
see the world.
Ugh, you know, I'm getting awfully tired of you going on and on about you pulling trains. Can't you just not be happy for once?
Enough now, you lot. Don't be sad, Thomas. I got some trucks I need to take to Walsworth tomorrow. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches around for you in the yards.
Really, Edward? Would you do that for me?
Yes, Thomas, of course.
Oh, thank you. That will be nice.
Now let's try and get some sleep, shall we?
Oh, Edward, I wish it was morning.
The next morning, Edward and Thomas asked their drivers, and when they said yes, both engines ran off happily to find trucks. Now trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they're doing. They don't listen to their engine, and when they stop, they bump right into each other, and I'm sorry to say, they play tricks on an engine who isn't used to them. Edward knew all about trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful. However...
Thomas, there is something I need to tell you.
Oh, I know. I need to be coupled up before I can go. You don't have to tell me.
It's not bad, Thomas. Drops and drops can play tricks on you. It's not the same as in the yards. They will push you right off the rails if you aren't careful.
Don't be silly, Edward. You worry too much.
Before Edward could answer, the shunter fastened the coupling, the signal dropped, the guard blew his whistle, and Thomas started off. But the trucks were not ready.
Oh! Wait, Thomas, wait!
Come along.
All right, don't fuss.
And Thomas pulled the groaning trucks out of the siding and onto the open line.
Thomas, be careful!
But Edward's warning fell on deaf ears. Thomas began going faster and faster. He whistled loudly as they went through Henry's tunnel. They clattered through stations and rumbled over bridges. Thomas was very proud of himself, but the trucks grew crosser and crosser. Soon they approached Gordon's Hill.
Go for the train.
Thomas's driver began to slow him down.
Steady now.
And he began to put on the brakes.
We're stopping.
No! Go on!
The trucks bumped into each other, and before his driver could stop them, they'd pushed Thomas down the hill and were laughing and clattering behind him. They passed Henry, who was very surprised. Thomas tried hard to make them stop making him go so fast.
Stop pushing!
Go on!
Thomas was glad when they reached the bottom. Then he saw where they were meant to stop.
There's the station. Oh dear, what should I do?
Luckily, the points were set, and they swerved into the goods yard. Thomas put on his brakes tight and skidded across the rails. He shut his eyes tight.
I must stop!
When he opened his eyes, he had stopped just in front of the buffers, and there watching him was the fat director.
What are you doing here, Thomas?
I brought Edward's trucks, sir.
Oh, why did you come so fast?
Oh, I didn't mean to. I was pushed.
Pushed? You've a lot to learn about trucks then, little Thomas. They are silly things and must be kept in their place. That's why I asked Edward to take these trucks and not you. If you're not prepared to be patient and do things properly, then I shall have to keep you in the shed.
No, sir, please. I want to learn. I want to be a really useful engine.
In that case, after pushing them about here for a few weeks, you will know almost as much about them as Edward. Then you will be a really useful engine.
The fat director wasn't just cross with Thomas. He was cross with Edward too. He told both engines they had to stay in the yards at Wellsworth until Thomas had learned how to handle trucks.
Oh, I'm sorry, Edward. This is all my fault.
Never mind, Thomas. At least we are working together again, just like the old days, hey?
Well, that's true.
Thomas and Edward had been the first two engines to be brought for the railway. They had helped out with its construction. It was nice to be working together again, but it was rather bittersweet. Every morning, the fat director would come to Wellsworth to catch his train. He would always make sure to come to the yards and see how Thomas was doing.
Hello, Thomas. Remember, don't be impatient. You may not be as strong or fast as Gordon, but you can be a really useful engine. Don't let the silly trucks tease you.
Yes, sir.
The fat director headed for the station. He pulled out his umbrella as it began to rain. When he got there, he noticed the coaches were waiting at the platform, but there was no engine to pull them.
Where is Henry? He's meant to be pulling this.
Henry had been uncoupled from his train and was hiding in Wellsworth sheds. Thomas noticed him and steamed over.
Henry, what are you doing here? Your passengers are waiting.
You pulled the train, Thomas. You like pulling trains.
No, Henry, it's your train. And besides, I have to stay in the yards.
Well, I have to stay in the shed. It's raining, Thomas. A lot.
But Henry, don't you want to pull the train? Don't you want to hurry along the tracks and...
A big, fat, wet raindrop fell from the shed doorway and splashed on Henry's running board. Henry jumped in fright.
It's just water, Henry. Come on, just little drops of water.
Just like what I put in my boiler?
Exactly. Come on, Henry. Your passengers are waiting.
Thomas rolled out into the wet weather. The rain poured down onto his boiler and rolled down his side tanks. But Thomas wasn't affected in the slightest.
See? It's just water.
Henry gulped and slowly inched forwards out of the sheds and out into the rain. The rain came down on Henry's face and boiler, but other than that, nothing. Henry started to laugh as he steamed out of the sheds.
It's only water. Just water.
And still laughing, Henry steamed towards the station to continue his train. Thomas watched him go, and feeling rather satisfied, he went back to work. Thomas worked hard in the yards now. He knew that he wasn't as clever as he once thought. Besides, he wanted to learn all about trucks and coaches so he could be a really useful engine. There were lots of trucks in the yards, and Thomas had to pull and push them into the right places. However, on another siding, sitting by themselves, was a small coach and two queer things.
I wonder where those trucks are meant to go.
Thomas headed over towards the strange trucks. He noticed that they were both fast asleep.
Wake up, lazy wheels!
Judy? Jerome? Emergency! Where's the accident? Is an engine off the rails? Or is it a breakdown? A fire? A bridge out?
Wait, no, well, I was just wondering where you were meant to be going.
Oi! You shouldn't touch those trucks! Get off that siding now!
Oh, sorry! Sorry too, for disturbing you.
And Thomas puffed sheepishly away. When he was at a distance, his driver explained.
That's the breakdown train, Thomas. When there is an accident, the workmen get into the coach and the engine takes them to the accident to rescue the hurt people and clear and repair the line. The two cranes are used for lifting heavy things like engines and coaches and trucks.
Thomas was impressed. A few days later, Thomas saw some familiar faces.
Hello, Thomas.
Thomas smiled. It was Annie and Clarabelle, the two coaches he had spoken to after James had handled them roughly on his first day. Thomas updated them on what had been going on over the last few weeks.
I want to be the best engine I can. Edward has been helping me out so much since I've been here, and I've learned so much on how to handle trucks.
Sounds like you have quite the eventful few weeks. At least you have learned from your experiences. Better than those big engines. They will never change.
Speaking of which, where's James? Doesn't he always pull you?
He's been on Goods Works recently. The fat director wasn't pleased with his handling over us and the other coaches. Good thing too. Whenever I'm around, I get this horrible burning smell.
Thomas chuckled. Just then, Edward pulled in. He had news for Thomas.
Driver tells me that the fat director is coming by this afternoon, Thomas. He wants to know how you're getting on.
I'm getting okay now, aren't I?
Of course you are. I think you know almost as much about drugs as I do now.
Thomas smiled proudly and began to back up.
Thomas, what's that?
Thomas rolled right into the back of another truck. The grumpy foreman on the other side of the yard gave Thomas a glare, but Edward and the coaches started to laugh.
Well, almost.
I was meant to do that.
Suddenly, there was a whistle and a shout, and a goods train went through the main line, going much too fast.
Help! Help! They're pushing me! They're pushing me!
On!
James!
And without thinking, Thomas gave chase to the runaway engine. Edward whistled in alarm for Thomas to come back, but Thomas didn't listen. James rocketed down the line. The stupid trucks giggled and laughed behind him. He applied his brakes, hoping that would be enough to stop them, but it didn't. It just made matters worse. James's brake blocks finally gave in and erupted into flames. James winced in pain as his brakes burnt away, useless against the surging trucks. He wanted nothing more but to stop. Thomas came up behind him and blew his whistle.
Thomas!
Use your brakes! Use your brakes!
I can't! My brake blocks are on fire! They're made of wood!
And as if to make themselves clear, some of the fire spat out and blew right past Thomas's face. Thomas gasped in shock and quickly made a plan.
I'm gonna try and couple up behind you, James. I'm gonna try and slow you down.
Thomas slowed down to let the train pass him. Then, once they reached a signal box, Thomas blew his whistle to get the signalman to change the points. He rolled up behind the brake van and called out to the guard.
Couple me up! Couple me up!
Right. Luckily, the guard had 2 spare shunters poles sitting in his compartment. He grabbed one and ran towards the back of the brake van's balcony. He tried to latch the pole onto Thomas's coupling and hook it around the brake vans. Unfortunately, the train swayed and lurched, and he kept missing.
Come on! We mustn't give up! We have to try!
Suddenly, James ran over a bump. The jolt caused the guard to drop the shunter's pole. It landed on the rails, causing Thomas to bump over it. It knocked Thomas back and caused him to slow behind the train. The guard started to panic. Faster! Faster! Thomas chased after the train as fast as he could, while the guard went to grab the second pole. Thomas caught right up to the train and tried his best to keep up. The guard tried hard to couple Thomas up to the train. Just then, they heard James let out a yell. Thomas and the guard looked back, only to see that they were heading right towards the bend. It was too late now. James flew off the rails. The trucks tipped over and crashed right into each other. James's driver and fireman jumped clear while the guard crouched in the brake van. Dust flew everywhere. As the dust settled, Thomas stared in shock at the now wrecked train. The guard crawled out of the brake van. He had a few cuts and bruises, but nothing was broken. James wailed in pain as he sat in the dirt. His driver and fireman had gotten up and were examining him, checking for any boiler leaks.
Edward was right. Troublesome trucks can run an engine right off the rails.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Stay right there, James. I'll go and get help.
And with that, he headed back towards Wellsworth. Back in the yards, Edward was talking to the fat director, who had finally arrived. He was telling him about how Thomas had darted off after James's runaway. Just then, Thomas rolled in, blowing his whistle.
Wake up! Wake up! Emergency!
Judy? Jerome? Emergency!
James is off the line! His brakes are on fire! We must go quickly!
Right, we're ready. Crew up! And with that, the workmen boarded the coach and off they went. The fat director called out to Thomas, but Thomas ignored him. He puffed back down the line as fast as he could.
Hurry, hurry, hurry!
This time, Thomas wasn't pretending to be like Gordon. He really meant it.
Bother those trucks and their tricks. I do hope James will be okay.
Soon they reached the accident site. Thomas pushed Judy and Jerome alongside. Once Judy and Jerome had derailed the unhurt trucks, Thomas pulled them away.
Oh dear, don't hurt us, Thomas, please, don't hurt us.
Serves you right, serves you right.
He was very busy for the rest of the day. He pushed backwards and forwards all afternoon, and he scolded the trucks.
This will teach you a lesson. This will teach you a lesson.
Yes it will, yes it will.
They left the broken trucks, and with the 2 cranes they lifted James back on the rails. Have you got him at the front there, Judy? Yes, Jerome. Ready to lift? Me too. Let's go. Thomas watched the operation with interest. James, on the other hand, didn't like dangling in the air at all. You're alright. You're alright. We've got you. We've got you. At last, James was lowered slowly and gently onto the track. He tried to move, but he couldn't, so Thomas pulled him to the steamworks, where he could be repaired. Little did Thomas know, the fat director had come to check on the accident site. He watched Thomas with interest as he was puffing away. That evening, the engines were very happy to see Thomas indeed.
Well done, Thomas. Today, you really were the best engine.
Even Gordon was impressed.
What you did was terrific.
Really useful, that's what I say.
The engines looked up. It was the fat director heading towards the sheds.
Well, Thomas, I've heard all about it, and I am very pleased with you. James will have proper brakes, a bit of repair here and there, and a new coat of paint. And you, Thomas, due to your unselfish bravery and heroism, you have shown yourself worthy of having your own branch line.
My own branch line?
Congratulations, Thomas.
Well done.
Gordon then turned to the fat director and cleared his throat quietly.
And who will do the shunting while Thomas is gone?
I don't know, Gordon. Perhaps you can shunt your own coaches until I can get another station pilot.
Gordon groaned as the other engines laughed. The fat director put up his hand for silence.
Now, as you all know, our railway has recently made an agreement with the neighbouring London Midland and Scottish Railway. It is how we ended up with James, after all. Anyway, the LMS has agreed to have our railway terminate with theirs at the mainland junction, Barrow-in-Furness. It means, however, we will have to move our main terminus and sheds to the other side of the island, at Tidmouth. Therefore, in a few months, you'll all be moving shit. I know this will be a big change, but it will change our railway for the better.
And with that, the fat director walked away, leaving the other engines in anticipation. A few months later, everything was ready. The extension to Thomas's new branch line was done. The engines had all been moved to Tidmouth and were running on a new timetable. And the mainland junction had become a hub of activity, with engines of all different shapes and sizes passing through every day. Thomas and Edward were both in the yards when an engine they'd never seen before came steaming in.
James? Is that really you?
Of course it is. How do you like my new paperwork?
Wow, James. You look, well, splendid.
I know. I am ready for my coaches.
We are Thomas's coaches now. That's right, and he's got his very own branch line too.
Eh?
Thomas sat down onto the 2 coaches proudly and steamed out of the yards, leaving James in surprise.
Aww.
Off to see the world now, Thomas?
Yes, Edward. Yes, I am.
And he proudly steamed away to the junction for his branch line. Thomas was as happy as can be. He puffed proudly down his branch line with his 2 coaches. It ran through green farms and beautiful valleys. It even went over a large river. It ended at the village of Farquhar. When Thomas steamed into the brand new station, the local villagers cheered and welcomed him to their community. On another siding, just outside the station, stood a strange rusting old engine, with his boiler poising up in the air. It was one of the old coffeepots who used to run the branch line. Ah, you must be the new engine for the branch.
Yes, I am. I'm Thomas.
Well, look after the branch line, Thomas. Please, run it with pride.
Don't worry, Mr. Coffeepot. I will. You can count on me.
But I'm not Mr. Coffeepot. My name is Glenn. The old engine chuckled as Thomas steamed away. Thomas is never lonely on his branch line. The last few remaining coffee pots still pull trucks down from the quarry from time to time. Edward or Henry stop quite often at the junction and they tell him the news. Gordon is always in a hurry, but never forgets to blow a friendly poop poop on his whistle. And Thomas whistles a peep peep in return. And as for James, well, let's just say his first few weeks back were not easy. But that's another story. One that I'm sure you're already familiar with.
He's a really useful engine, you know. All the other engines, they'll tell you so. He huffs and puffs and whistles, rushing to and fro. He's the really useful engine we adore. He's a really useful engine, you know. 'Cause the fan controller, he told him so. Now he's got a branch line to call his very own. He's the really useful engine we adore. He's the one. He's the one. He's the really useful engine that we adore. He's the one. He's the number one. Thomas the Tank Engine. Little blue train, he's always there whenever you need a hand. If you need help with the situation, who comes into mind? He's the one. He's the one. He's the really useful engine that we adore. He's the one. He's the number one. Thomas the Tank Engine. He's a really useful engine, you know. Maybe little, but he's never slow.